Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone. This is Lizzie and Justin, and we are turning towards life this week with a source chosen by Justin, by the wonderful MC Richards, from a book called Centering. And Justin, as always, we found another source. I think I say this often, but it's miraculous to me that there are so many things to talk about in the world, so many things to process between us, and so many diverse places, humans, that this comes from. And I'm so grateful for that. I was downstairs, as I normally am these days, very early in the morning when it's still dark, kind of relishing this time that was coming up as a place to come to do exactly what MC Richards is talking about, which is to kind of find centre, to come and find sanity and conversation and stretching of my normal patterns, if you like. So I'm really looking forward to the feeling of unfamiliarity, although mixed with familiarity of being here with you, but the unfamiliarity of the source, the strangeness of feeling stretched by something, and the familiarity of it too, but that we enter into different kinds of spaces by doing this each week is ridiculously valuable to me. And I know that that's what we hear from people who write to us and talk to us, Justin, when we meet them as well. So I just want to thank everyone for their openness, really, and our openness to all of these conversations, and allowing them to soften us and impact us and make us wonder a little bit more about what it is to be alive, and to turn towards all of these conversations with an open heart and mind, and wonder what that really means. So anyway, I'm just feeling grateful this morning and really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be invited into this source with you, Justin. So thank you for choosing this.
Lizzie, it's very good to be with you, and hello everybody. Thank you for being with us in all the ways and in all the places and at all the times that you are. So the source, which we are about to read, as we always do, so I'll read it and then you'll read it, Lizzie, and then we'll talk and see what conversation comes from it. The source you can find with all of the sources at turningtowards.life, where you can find all of the episodes, the conversations of this entire path that we've been walking. You can also get the source in our email. So at turningtowards.life, you can sign up to receive the email and a link to the audio and video and various other things of each week's conversation in your inbox. And you can support us there if you want. Been so fortunate, Lizzie, that there have been people who have been choosing to support us with a one-time cup of coffee, or other people are choosing to support us every week or every month, which is an amazing thing that helps us keep on doing this. So you're very welcome to do that. And we have a Facebook group as well. So if you want to search out Turning Towards Life on Facebook, you'll always get the first glance at this conversation. It always goes out first there, and you can talk to us there, and you can email us hello@turningtowards.life, or Lizzie or Justin there. It's lovely to hear from you. So this source is from this marvelous and very stretching book by MC Richards, who was a potter and a writer and a teacher, called Centering. I was just saying to you, Lizzie, before we began, that the book, for me at least, begins in a very resonant and inviting and quite accessible place, and then as each chapter goes on, I feel like she is stretching me more and more and more to keep up with her thinking and what she sees. And it's a book sort of about pottery, but it's really a book about living, and it's got some pretty challenging invitations for how we should live. And this is from page 15 of that book. It goes like this. You don't need to tell me what education is. Everybody really knows that education goes on all the time, everywhere through our lives, and that it is the process of waking up to life. It takes a heap of resolve to keep from going to sleep in the middle of the show. It's not that we want to sleep our lives away, it's that it takes certain kinds of energy, certain capacities for taking the world into our consciousness, certain real powers of body and soul to be a match for reality. That's why knowledge and consciousness are two quite different things. Knowledge is like a product we consume and store. All we need for that are good closets. By consciousness, I mean a state of being awake to the world throughout our organism. This kind of consciousness requires not closets, but an organism attuned to the finest perceptions and responses. It allows experience to breathe through it as light enters and changes a room. That which we consume with a certain passivity, accepting it for the most part from our teachers, who in turn have accepted it from theirs, is like the food we eat. And food, in order to become energy or will, must be transformed entirely by the processes of metabolism. We do not become the food we eat, rather the food turns into us. Similarly with knowledge, at best, we do not turn into encyclopedias or propaganda machines or electric brains. Our knowledge, if we allow it to be transformed within us, turns into a capacity for life-serving human deeds. If knowledge does not turn into life, it poisons, just as food would if it stayed in the stomach and was never digested, and the waste products never thrown off.
Thank you, Justin. Learning to be alive. You don't need to tell me what education is. Everybody really knows that education goes on all the time, everywhere, all through our lives, and that it is the process of waking up to life. It takes a heap of resolve to keep from going to sleep in the middle of the show. It's not that we want to sleep our lives away. It's that it takes certain kinds of energy, certain capacities for taking the world into our consciousness, certain real powers of body and soul to be a match for reality. That's why knowledge and consciousness are two quite different things. Knowledge is like a product we consume and store. All we need for that are good closets. By consciousness, I mean a state of being awake to the world throughout our organism. This kind of consciousness requires not closets, but an organism attuned to the finest perceptions and responses. It allows experience to breathe through it as light enters and changes a room. That which we consume with a certain passivity, accepting it for the most part from our teachers, who in turn have accepted it from theirs, is like the food we eat. And food, in order to become energy, or will, must be transformed entirely by the processes of metabolism. We do not become the food we eat, rather the food turns into us. Similarly with knowledge, at best, we do not turn into encyclopedias or propaganda machines or electric brains. Our knowledge, if we allow it to be transformed within us, turns into a capacity for life-serving human deeds. If knowledge does not turn into life, it poisons, just as food would, if it stayed in the stomach and was never digested, and the waste products never thrown off.
Thanks, Lizzie. There's so much to unpack in here, but I think I want to start at the end. If knowledge doesn't turn into life, it poisons, just as food would if it stayed in the stomach and was never digested. It is so, seems to me, so refreshing and necessary and wonderful to have MC Richards remind us that every single thing is, every single experience, every single new something that we encounter is an opportunity either to create life or to create a kind of deadness in ourselves. Like even learning, even sitting at the feet of a wonderful teacher who's been taught by someone else, who's been taught by someone else, who's been taught by someone else. We could take the experience of learning and we could have it become sort of solid and rigid and definite and dogmatic and shallow inside us. Or we could turn it into life. And throughout this whole piece is this call to, I love these words, obviously to waking up. It's easy to wake up or to sleep, but waking up requires energy. You have to have real powers of body and soul to do this, to bring ourselves into the world. And instead of just consuming and putting things in away, what needs to be awake, and I loved this, was, and it's a real challenge also, are being attuned to the finest perceptions and responses, to breathe through as light enters and changes a room. And I suppose I've been thinking about this. I realised now, as we're talking about this, that I've been thinking about this quite a lot over the last couple of days, because it's the end of December 2024. Lizzie, this is our last one of 24. And I think often at this time of year, as many of us do, I've been thinking about time. And I've been thinking back over the years. And in fact, I was looking at some photos yesterday of when my oldest son, who is now 24, was just born. And I was marveling in both a way full of wonder, but also a way full of sadness at how time goes. And then I was trying to figure out how much of the passage in between the two, like how much of it have I been awake for? And how much of it did I go through it sort of putting things into closets? And how much of it have I allowed myself to be attuned to the finest perceptions and responses? And how much of it have I consumed and stored? And how much of it have I come out with a certain passivity? And how much of it have I brought? I'm really caught by this line again. It takes a certain kind of energy, certain capacities for taking the world into our consciousness, and real powers of body and soul to be a match for reality. And of course, I suppose like many people, like most of us, I recognize quite quickly that some of it, I feel like I've met the world that way. Maybe significant parts of it, and a lot of it I've carried myself through as a sort of passive recipient. I don't even remember those years. And that's very tender to feel. And then when I feel all of that, I come at these words with a real feeling in it, a real call, Lizzie, which is, okay, so I can sleepwalk my way through whatever days I have left. I could. It would be really easy to do. Or I could make a choice. It's not that we want to go to sleep in the middle of the show, she says. Of course we don't. It's just that it takes a certain kind of commitment, certain kinds of energy and capacities for taking the world into our consciousness and real powers of body and soul. So I read this as a kind of as a wake up kind of text, a sort of pay attention. And because I know that she's a potter, I'm imagining sitting at the wheel, which I long to do actually, and I've done very little of in my life, sitting at the wheel with a lump of clay in my hands, ready to turn it into a pot, or maybe in that beginning point where the play is centered and you're just getting your fingers in and it's starting to become something, and having MC Richards whisper in my ear, pay attention. The clay is alive in your hands. Don't go through this on autopilot. Notice what you're doing. And it sounds like the simplest thing in the world, and maybe it is, but it's also the most difficult. And that's the sort of tender point at which I'm coming into this conversation, having read her.
I'm feeling, Justin, that kind of, like, somehow that tenderness, maybe, and the openness to being awake while sitting at the wheel of our lives is the kind of prerequisite or something for this sentence that you brought to us from the middle of this, which is about allowing experience to breathe through this organism as light enters and changes a room. So in order to be changed by our experience, we have to be awake, I think, is what is being said here. And I'm feeling very moved by this wondering about what it means to be changed by what we experience. By being in life, we're metabolizing our experience. This brilliant metaphor of metabolism is so good. And so what has to happen is that we have to have this openness, this wondering of what it means to be awake and fully aware of our capacities to go to sleep, all of us. And then in our wondering about being awake, maybe there's this opening for us to be this organism that does transform and metabolize our lives so that we're in receipt of it. And I feel very opened by this comparison with life experience and food. And what do we do to metabolize our lives? What do we do to process? Like our body is processing the things we eat all the time, and then becoming our energy and becoming our life force and becoming our immune systems and becoming the way our bodies are and everything. What our bones are made of, what our muscles are made of. And that's on the physical realm. And there's another realm, which is life experience. And I am feeling so appreciative of the kind of the validation, I guess, in this, of the way that we can live life where we're processing our lives. And that's the process by which waste is thrown off. So, you and I can be in a conversation to process an experience that each of us has had. Either of us has had, both of us have had. And in the processing of it, in the conversation, in the reflection, we get a chance to see what's there that is ours to transform or to become. And also we get a chance to throw off the waste. But I'm feeling like if we're not processing our lives, if we're not in conversation with one another, if we're not in reflective practice in some way, there's this kind of build-up that happens, like MC Richards is saying about food that doesn't get digested in a stomach. It really matters that we're metabolizing our lives. It really matters that we're reflecting, that we're talking, that we're processing our lives so that we are actively participating in a rightful process of metabolizing life. Because it's a big thing to be a human being and experience things, to experience difficulties, to walk along the street and to feel that whatever pain is right out there in the world, whatever pain is in here, in my house, in my body, like also the joy. It's so easy to go to sleep, of course, because it's a big experience being a human being. And so this relationship between processing our lives and being awake, they just seem right next to each other, right the same thing, which is in order for awakeness to be even possible, I have to be processing. And in order to process, I have to be awake to the fact that there's something to process, to be in reflection about, to receive. So I'm really, really grateful for this source and this bringing in of metabolism and processing, the processing of humanness, of being human, and that being like metabolism and the functionality of metabolism in the human body.
I think one of the things that's really striking me from what you're saying, Lizzie, is that the metabolism of our bodies, when we eat, it's the processes of metabolism in us run on automatic. We don't have to do anything for that to happen. And what I hear you saying is, for the rest of our lives, we do have to do something for that to happen, and that it's one of the I suppose the paradoxes of being a human is that our capacity to reflect and metabolize with our minds and our hearts and our bodies, our experience, that capacity to pay attention and to reflect and to make meaning and to feel our way into things and to have them impact us, like to allow ourselves to be impacted by our lives. That very, very human capacity is actually the same capacity, is the same sort of imaginative capacity that we can use to go to sleep, because I can either be bringing my imagination and my full-heartedness and my openness and the feeling of my body to the actual experiences I'm having, like you said, as I walk out onto the street and feel everything that's there, all the possibilities and all of the suffering and all of the everything. So I can use my imagination to inhabit that, or I can use my imagination to take myself far away from it. And the imaginative capacity is the same capacity, actually. And maybe because they're the same capacity, sometimes it's hard to notice unless we're really paying attention which one we're doing. So I know, for example, that when I wonder whether this sentence where she says it takes a heap of resolve to keep from going to sleep in the middle of the show. Now we're talking, I think, that at least for me, my being asleep at the time doesn't feel like I'm asleep. For me, it's often I'm daydreaming about something else, or I've got looping worries and thoughts going round and round. I heard somebody say recently that worry is nothing but misplaced imagination, which I thought was such a wonderful term. So at the moment of it, it feels like I'm sort of, in a way, I'm alive because things are happening within me. In fact, for me, often lots is happening within me. But when I'm that way, I'm definitely not metabolizing my actual experience of living in the world as it comes to me. I'm sort of away from it. And I'm definitely not, and you drew attention to this line, which I now really see. It's the middle line of this section of allowing experience to breathe through us as light enters and changes a room. So a lot of I'm sure this is true of many other people, a lot of the way that my imagination goes when I'm tuning out of life, what it does is it keeps certain patterns going on and on and on and round and round and round in the same way, like something that's been put in the closet and the door's been shut and it's never going to change. It just goes round and round and round. And then when I remember, as I'm doing right now, sitting here with you and looking at you, paying attention to the actual experience of sitting here with you right now, which is very sweet and very welcome and very extraordinary and wide. And if I go that way, there's so much of life ready for my imagination to respond to, and then I can do what you said, which is to reflect on it and pay attention to it as it's happening. And I recognize that the looping imagination and worry, the thing that takes me away, is really a defense against not being in control, of not knowing what's going to happen next. And I can see how the difference between the two, and again, I'm going to pick up one other line, which is really important here, that this is, MC Richards is not really writing about, do we like our lives or not? Do we feel like we've inhabited our lives deeply or not? It's partly about that. But then she says near the end, this is about turning what we learn and what we experience into a capacity for life-serving human deeds. Like our capacity to take care of one another and to be of service to one another and to meet one another really depends upon us doing this, on not being asleep in the middle of the show. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad for this reminder as I'm sitting here on a Sunday morning in December with, yes, we're separated geographically, but we've got this amazing technology between us, so I can sit here with you and really feel what it's like to be here. And it's so opening and so welcome, and I can feel myself filling up with the capacity, the powers of body and soul to be a match for reality. Obviously, in large part because of who I'm with and what we're doing, but also as a general orientation, and I can take that into all the next things I'll do today, and if I can remember to stay awake for them all, I'm also equipping myself to be of service to all those around me much more than I would be if I if I keep on imagining myself away from my life.
Somehow, Justin, it just popped into my head about this phrase navel gazing that I've heard so many times in response to me telling somebody what I love to do and who I like to hang out with and how I like to live my life, kind of thing. And I know that I don't know what that. I'm not sure I've ever I don't think I've ever gazed at my navel. I don't really understand that phrase, but I know it's kind of a way of saying all of that's a waste of time or something. Like, that's how I feel when people have said it to me. And I'm just feeling a moment of gratitude. And, you know, maybe people who find their way to us, Justin, have also been told that they're reflecting or wondering or curiosity or the kind of stuff they read is time wasting navel gazing because you're not getting anything done and you're not achieving anything and it's not efficient or something. Maybe that's this little collection of home that we find here, and this collection of belonging that we find here is a homeful feeling because this feels really important. And for it to be brushed away, this kind of conversation as navel gazing and a waste of time or whatever, feels really dishonest in my system. Like, I can't say that about this in any shape or form because it feels like life itself. It feels like this affordance for this invitation to awakeness, that without which I don't really know what life is. Actually, it feels very enabling of my feeling of belonging here as a human being, to be in conversation like this. And maybe that's what it's like for people to listen to us, is that it's a place where this kind of relationship to life is honoured and respected, and we are loving being in the conversations that we love to be in, and that there's a place for us. That's how it feels to me. And so, as MC Richards, he's clearly a very intelligent being, bringing this language to us, showing us that this is very valuable. Learning to be alive is very valuable. It really matters to the human experience, to consciousness itself, that we are tending towards a state of awakeness and realness in the world. I'm feeling very grateful for that validation and that strength of, I guess, there's an energy of declaration in it that's to be taken seriously and to be held with the kind of, what's the word? I don't know, maybe reverence that it deserves, which is that to be in this conversation is a very central part of being a human being. So I'm just feeling a wave of gratitude for that, and that love that I have of being here, of doing Turning Towards Life with you, Justin, and feeling the relationship that it makes between us and the people who come here and listen and maybe watch us sometimes and send us messages. And I'm feeling really grateful that we all get it, and that somehow more and more people are coming into this little community of ours in order to feel into the conversation and to wonder and to let it be a source of contactfulness and awakening and validating our human experience of being here. So I'm feeling really grateful for that. Grateful for you, Justin, at choosing this. Grateful for MC Richards for pouring this invitational, challenging, stretching language into the world so that we can be recipients of it and share it. And grateful to everybody for gathering around this and for supporting us and for being in the conversation with us. Because as I think we spoke about last week, this is not only happening on the inside of us. As we speak, the happening begins and continues to go on in the inner world of anybody who's listening as well. And that is the conversation. So I'm feeling very grateful for that, and that we're here and that we have the tech that allows us to do this. And you're so brilliant, Justin, of getting us into the world and making this all possible on that level as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and just acknowledging that this is our time to finish, and that we'll be back next week with another source which I'm going to be choosing. And just to say a big great big thank you to everybody, including MC Richards, for this wonderful, wonderful source. And thank you, Justin, for your openness and your wondering and your consciousness and your will and wish to be awake in the world.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Thank you, everyone. We will, all being well, be back here next week, and we'll see you then. Bye.